Welcome to Vital MTB's 2024 SL e-bike test sessions. In this video, we will discuss the performance of Karbon Bikes PowerLine SL. To read the full review, head to vitalmtb.com.
Yeah, over this effort. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna do a third outing? Okay.
Founded in 2020, Karbon Bikes is a small company out of Massachusetts whose mission is to create unique and exclusive bikes around proven components. The PowerLine SL is their first lightweight model aimed at offering full power performance in a sub 43-pound package via a 75 Nm Bafang motor and a 410 watt-hour battery. So how is this all possible? And what even is a Karbon? We asked the same questions and we're eager to see what this blinged-out mystery bike was all about. Karbon's e-bike lineup is a testament to their unique approach of building bikes exclusively around Bafang motors. While Bafang is more prevalent within the budget-friendly commuter category of e-bikes, their frame-mounted drive units are rarely seen in the eMTB world but boast some promising numbers. With the PowerLine SL, Karbon wanted to come as close to full power performance as possible while being as far from full weight as they could get. They achieved this with Bafang's M820 motor that weighs just a mere 5.1 pounds but pumps out 75 Nm of torque with 250 watts of peak power. Pair that with a 410 watt-hour battery that weighs just 5.7 pounds, and Bafang has developed a solid power-to-weight ratio. Looking at the user interface of the Bafang system, the full-color screen provides the most vivid picture quality of any display we've used. Displayed stats include battery percentage, assist level, speed, and a tripometer. Switching between the 5 assist levels is done with Bafang's ergonomic bar-mounted remote. Aside from navigating through the ride modes, there is a plethora of menus within the system, allowing for a unique level of personalization in mid-ride data. With how much information is available on the bike itself, app integration is less necessary. The Bafang Go app acts more like a standard cycling computer that can display navigation and data in addition to the information already shown on the bar-mounted display. The dual 29-inch PowerLine SL lands squarely in the middle of the all-mountain category with 150 mm of Horst-link driven rear-wheel travel paired with a 160 mm fork. The 64-degree head-tube angle helps maintain consistent handling over a wide variety of terrain, while a lengthy 457 mm chainstay keeps both wheels planted. A 77-degree C-tube angle creates an efficient pedaling position and places rider weight firmly into the seat. The PowerLine SL was the only size-large bike in the test, with all other bikes being XL. This meant that the 1,267 mm wheelbase and 474 mm reach were the shortest in the group. Karbon offers the PowerLine SL in 3 build kits in 3 sizes. Builds start at $7,350 and top out at $9,700 for the EXO Axis build that we tested. Frame construction consists of high modulus carbon fiber front and rear triangles with an aluminum rocker and a custom paint finish with holographic decals. Our build kit was highlighted by a SRAM EXO transmission drivetrain, RockShox Ultimate Level suspension, Magura MT7 brakes, and Karbon's own carbon fiber handlebar and wheels. The PowerLine SL was the 4th lightest bike in the test at 43.56 pounds. It is worth noting that the images on Karbon's website do not reflect the actual build specs, so be sure to read the descriptions closely when shopping. The PowerLine SL was hands down the wild card of this test sessions due to its unfamiliarity with the 3 of us. However, with a tried and true suspension layout and quality components, it proved to be an easy bike to hop on and feel comfortable. What took the most time to adjust to was learning the ins and outs of the Bafang system. The outlier in the group, the bike that we all did not know much about, before we showed up for this test, but the Karbon was surprising in some aspects and maybe a bit average in others. So let's start with the Bafang motor system. That was probably the most interesting aspect of this bike, as it's the only one that I think it's definitely the only time we've ridden it and the only bike in the test that had it. What stood out about it to you guys?
Biggest unknown as far as motors for sure, along with the bike as a whole, but it surprised me kind of in the way that it works. It's almost a contradictory approach to, or not contradictory, but just kind of a contrasting approach to the other bikes where they went for really high torque with not a lot of max output wattage, I think.
Yep.
And the way you ride it is very different from the way that you would, I think it's kind of an unnatural way to pedal. Like if you've ridden trail bikes a lot and you're trying to get something close to that, this maybe isn't it. It's more if you want to experience mountain biking, having never been mountain biking, and you want to do it for the benefit of having an e-bike.
Yeah.
It just felt like it wanted to be lugged in a high gear, and it was honestly awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe it as it feels like it has less power than the 75 Newton meters that it is listed at. It felt like it was more similar to the 60 Newton meter Fazua system we rode, and that power was very low end torque provided. You know, once where a lot of these bikes feed in power, and as you increase your input, it sort of met and exceeded a bit. This, you had to stay at a lower input, because if you surpassed that kind of 250 watts max power output it had, it would just start to kind of fall flat. There was like as opposed to an exponential growth in assistance, it just more ramped up and then fell off.
Lots of moments that feel like if you've ridden an e-bike and you know that feeling, especially on a full-size e-bike, when you hit that 20 mile an hour max speed and the motor quits helping you, that you feel that when you kind of output more than the bike outputs, right? Yeah. So like, it was very, like you said, counterintuitive for me. Like I've been sort of educated to ride e-bikes at a higher cadence, treat it more like a spin bike. And every time I was struggling with this bike, because every time I would feel a loss in power, I would just downshift and be like, okay, I'm just going to get into a more spinny gear. And I just felt like I'd get more tired. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So you're going the wrong way.
It was working. And apparently I didn't experiment enough, because I had this preconceived notion that like with an e-bike, you go spin more.
Pedal harder.
And then that was magnified more. I don't think we were having some charging issues with the bike upside down. Maybe the on button got pressed while it was charging, so it was kind of like releasing.
User error
I think there could have been that, but regardless, there was like the very first day we plugged in all the bikes, and like an hour and a half later, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a user error of you have to really plug in the charger to like 101%. There's regardless of what the point is, we plugged in 7 e-bikes and they all charged, and this thing took 2 different tries because we would go to ride it and it was dead. So user error, whatever you want to call it, that means that it requires more focus to make sure you get it charging.
Yeah, I think the upside down thing hit the power button. That was our fault. But just looking at the charging cable alone, it's like half the size of the other ones. So it's just not, and able to charge as fast.
The port itself is smaller, cheaper looking. I have nothing to back that up. It's just comparing it to kind of what all the other bikes are using. It's very
that
simple
input,
looking.
Yeah, the input is just like a smaller gauge wire.
Yeah. And but I think, on the trail, when you ride it the way it likes to be ridden, which is maybe like you were saying, Johnny, that entry new to e-biking rider who maybe naturally is going to be a gear or two taller than we might choose to ride an e-bike, it feeds power fine. Like it, in my mind, this bike was going to be more similar to the Cannondale and Giant on paper because of the Newton meters of torque it can provide. And it was definitely not like that. Like we did a lap together, and like when you were on the transition, and we were riding at the exact same pace and a similar output. So
so going a little bit back to the battery thing, the charge situation, my first time on it, started riding, wasn't quite at a full charge, maybe like 80 something percent. I don't really recall. 2 laps later, I'm down into the 20% range, and that's when the limp mode is engaged.
19%
to be exact. 19%, and that was at the bottom of the hill. Had to work up a steep hill to get back, and I was feeling like I was putting in every bit as much effort as my standard enduro bike without a motor, without a battery.
Yeah.
Which kind of has me in the mindset of like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like-
why not do that at 0%?
Like
why-
Yeah, or
5%,
even like 10%.
Or just like
yeah.
why, like when I'm on a bike, when I'm riding a bike and I'm like, well, yeah, if I'm putting in as much effort on a bike with a motor, with this that I paid for, why am I even on this? You know, just put me back
Yeah.
on the acoustic bike.
Yeah.
It's more to worry about.
It is kind of funny how you reach that in limp mode, and you reach it when you top out the max watt output. Like it's the same feeling of like there's
Yes.
a lot of drag. It comes on pretty, prevalent. It's pretty apparent when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
And definitely the battery life on this was more on the scale of the Giant. Just from looking at kind of our test loop we did and how much % battery life we were using, it was higher than the Zua, TQ, and Specialized's motor. So you're going to get a shorter range out of this system than you maybe would expect.
Yeah. User interface though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
Surprisingly
it.
good.
The
A
screen.
lot of information.
Yeah. Awesome display. It's like a little tiny TV screen. It's great. You turn it on, it's like colors and graphics.
Put
High
YouTube videos
resolution,
on there.
yeah.
Get me stoked.
You know,
It's got a
you probably
USB-C
could.
port.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit.
It is. You have so much data at your fingertips that you can cycle
It's
through.
like the app in the.
Yeah, it negates
It
an
literally,
app.
it very much so is the app on the display, which is cool.
And it's sized like similarly to the Shimano, maybe a
Very
little bigger.
similar, yeah.
And the mounting point. I like that. And I like the little control lever. It's got a lot of different buttons, different controls, so to speak,
And they're
in
easy to touch.
in a small format with like a nice click.
Yep, it's
They-
it's very Bosch looking and feeling.
Yeah.
It's a similar shape. You've got like up and down for modes, plus a middle button that cycles displays and turns it on and off.
Yeah.
But you get the nice click, similar to Shimano, and it is.
I think it's cool because like Bafang does a lot of things for OE manufacturers to what they want, and I think it's cool to see them kind of do what they've learned and what they want. And
Yeah.
obviously they have a ton of experience, and it looks like they have it pretty well figured out.
Yeah, totally. What about moving on to this super fancy looking frame behind
Well,
us?
the first thing I was gonna say, like frame detail wise, is the headset cable routing again
Yep.
for the purpose of I'm not crazy about the brakes and shifting having to go through it, but for the e-bike components, super clean.
Yeah, it's a great execution of that. It's already a cable that's right there. Just run it straight down through.
Yep.
Other than that, I mean, it's a fairly simple or tried and true design for a mountain bike. There's
Four
not,
bar.
yes, there's not a whole lot of
Horst-link.
craziness going on. There's no geometry adjustments. You get what you buy, and this is the only bike in this test that is a large. All the other bikes are XL. That's just due to the sizing they offer. So, kind of another detail. You're getting what you purchase with this one. It's pretty straight to the point. Maybe moving on from that, let's chat about the value of this bike. It's 10 grand, and I would say that that's overpriced for what you get. Like you can always change components on a bike, and not that you're not getting good components with this, but I think some things for me is like the longer stem, maybe the more simple shock, the lower bars, like all of those things don't really add to the bike by any means. It
Short dropper.
And I don't think changing them would make the bike ride better for sure. But from like a value standpoint, it's like I'm not really sure where I would change things to like cut cost. I just think it's maybe too priced in general.
Yeah, to me
Overpriced.
it seems like the spec of it is someone like a little more obsessed with like components on paper than actual functionality almost. Like
Fair.
it kind
Yeah.
of has these like bougie sort of spec image, but those things don't necessarily like pan out to like good riding characteristics.
And I think sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's like a beautiful bike to look at, and it's but actual rideability of some of those components I might change up.
Yeah, and I think the component spec doesn't really add to the ride experience of the bike. It's a very different ride experience than bikes that would benefit from having those components on it, in my opinion. Like I said, it's kind of your introduction to mountain bike feeling bike, not just from like a suspension standpoint or anything, but the motor power delivery as well. Like lugging in a higher gear is kind of a great way to burn through your battery and, you know, wear components faster. And the fact that that's the way the motor kind of prefers to deliver power kind of just leads to where kind of going for it on it. Like, doesn't seem like 4-piston McGurr brakes and ultimate level suspension are maybe going to like benefit you in that instance.
Yeah, benefit the user who this probably lends itself towards.
And on the opposite end, like when you go to the lower end spec that gets you like Marzocchi fork and Dior, I think, drivetrain and stuff, you're still at like $7,700, $78, and that's just, in my mind, the value's not there. Yeah, the value's just not there.
Yeah.
You're paying for the paint job.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's a bitchin' paint job, though.
It's got some.
Can't really argue it.
The detail,
the logos are clean too.
It
like
looks
components.
It looks fancy for sure. It's shiny. It, kind of looks like something somebody might want to steal off the back of your car, which might not be.
We put to the test. We're in Oakland, California.
Yeah, right.
You know?
True.
But we had locked.
The biggest letdown for me with that spec build is the cranks. I bend a lot of cranks, and I know that type of like solid, punched out, forged crank is just like asking to be slammed against a rock and bent. And if you're gonna put that much effort into like all these other components, put like some strong cranks on there. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about that.
Let's move on to how this thing rode on trail. Is there anything climbing-wise you guys want to touch on? We've touched a lot on the Bafang motor.
Yeah, kind of touched on climbing.
Being that it is the shortest bike in our category, slightly longer stem, to me it felt really... It just wanted to be in like these tight, technical, kind of flat sections, maybe some switchbacks, things like that. It did,
A bit more cramped, not in like a bad way, just in comparison to the other bikes to me climbing. I was just more forward.
I think if you lived somewhere, if your common riding area is somewhere that's very like tight, maybe rocky, flat, not a lot of, definitely not the fire road up, downhill trail down kind of bike. It's more like I live in Utah and I just kind of ride like technical flat trails that require an e-bike because I have sand, because I have rocks to get over, slick rock to go up.
That's a great point.
I think it could be really at home in that sort of scenario. Those areas too are lower speed in general, so steeper head angle, all those things benefit it there.
And the low torque and all that.
Lugging the bike, that's going to be awesome for that stuff.
So,
what about like how fun was the bike to go down the hill on?
I struggled to get along with it, honestly. Like, it's got a very kind of just standard, straightforward feeling, and I didn't really look at geo numbers before riding it and didn't realize how much smaller it was than kind of what I would normally ride, so I think I struggled with that. The longer stem was to kind of alleviate some of that, but it kind of just, for me, made it a little worse. I think, a shorter stem would maybe make it a little more comfortable, but there was a few component issues, so like struggle with the brakes, kind of wandering bite point, unfortunately, and didn't really get a good feel for it.
And I don't want to. It's bikes are so good nowadays. The suspension worked great. It's not by any means like bad, but it just. And I didn't even notice. Like I hopped on it. It felt like the rear end was working great. I didn't feel like anything stood out as like this is sketchy or this doesn't feel good. But when you combine slightly shorter, slightly taller, slightly steeper, all these sort of factors coming together, it's just like they all add on to where it's like maybe this isn't the bike for us. But that's not to say it's like not a good bike for someone else. But like going fast, downhill, the rough stuff. I found that the rear end ate it up. It was not that the suspension was holding it back. It's more that like the geo and some of those things were holding it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. It was a bike that it fit me better than you guys, but it still felt a little small, even on a large, which is generally what I ride. And similar experience. Suspension was fine. Nothing crazy exceptional, nothing bad anyway. Just kind of middle of the road. And middle of the road in a lot of ways. Like it was easy to get on and ride at like that 70% effort and have fun. I thought that it rode as light as kind of the scales showed. Like it was a bike that maybe because it was a little bit more compact, but just the whole package, I was able to like throw it around, and it wanted to be kind of that snappy, playful ride in a lot of aspects, and got a little overwhelmed with like harsh square edge bumps, but it still settled nicely when it got rough. Yeah, it's an interesting bike because it's fairly light. It rides pretty light for an e-bike. It's pretty active. It was exciting for me to ride on descents. I could influence the way it rode. The motor was way different in how you had to treat it to get performance out of it than all the other bikes. And like we've mentioned, I don't think that matched the way we like to ride e-bikes. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't suit somebody else.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about the like influencing the bike and jumping off stuff, like we're able to tie into those kind of attributes of the bike. Like we can kind of pick from our skill set, like, oh, well, it'll probably do this, this, and this well. But I think it's really well suited for someone who would maybe be quick to buy an e-bike into their like mountain bike journey, so to speak, of like, okay, I just want to get on something. I think it looks cool. Their skill set maybe isn't as developed, and it's going to get them there, through trial and error. Like it's going to be kind of easily maneuverable, easily influenced. And if they get sketchy in a rock garden, they'll be like, I wonder what that is. And they might learn a bit about like why bikes that have more aggressive angles are the way they are. But on the same hand, they might not benefit from those bikes with super aggressive angles if their skill set isn't there. So it kind of provides them a foundation that's like, well, I don't really know how to like pedal up a hill. I just want to kind of like get up there. Thought e-bikes were supposed to just carry me up, and it does that. And they might want to navigate something they've never ridden, and it's like, okay, well, it's really maneuverable, and it does that. And as the speed builds, they'll kind of like see the value in going to something more aggressive or more expensive.
Yep.